everybody. I'm glad you guys could all make it. Today we're just welcome to those online and also those that are here. Today we're just doing a training on basic van operation, and next week we'll do some more advanced stuff if you want at the same time, 10 a.m. on Tuesday the 27th. So, the main things I want to cover today are creating lists and saving them. So that can be creating your universe of voters that you're going to be contacting throughout the campaign, or creating lists just for one particular activity, sharing those lists with fellow users on the site, and then using those lists to print out for phone banking or canvassing or any other activity, and then also how to enter data back into that system. We'll also cover a little bit around adding new people, like new voter registration activities, and did I say covering adding data back into the system, as well as kinds of data that you can add into the system, most specifically the activist codes and survey questions, which are the two basic kinds of data that you add to people in VAN. So I think we should start first. How do you get help if you're in VAN once you've logged in? And there's a couple of different ways. The first is you'll see on the main menu on the left-hand side you have the Contact the Admin button. Excuse me, I'm just going to make this thing a little different size just so I can see it better. Okay, so the first thing is on the main menu you see the Contact the Admin button. And if you click on that, you'll see that it goes to me. And basically this just sends me a note, and it also sends me an email, which I get immediately, and then I can respond to it. So if you had a problem or a question, you could just say, like, how do I print out a list? I'm trying to, and then if you could just try to give me as much detail.
What is the button to press? Contact, right?
It's on the main menu. It says Contact the Admin was the question. Yeah. So I'm trying to print it, and so you would just say, I'm trying to print out a list. How do I do that? And then that will send me a note, and I'll respond, and you'll get an email back. So it's just like email. Just the difference is that if something happened, you can also see sort of all the open questions that have come up. And then also once I get it, so this is now in my inbox, I could, if it was a problem with the system or something that I needed to go to the VAN technical staff, I could then elevate it to them to get problems solved. So it's just like email, it's just a little more convenient for working within the site. So that's the one way to get help, is contacting me. The other is you'll see throughout the site on every page you have this little wiki button that if you click on is going to take you to a help page that is specific to the page that you're on. So we were just on the main menu, and I clicked on the wiki button, and it takes me to the stuff about the main menu, and it describes things that are on the site, how to do things. And it has just like Wikipedia or other stuff. You can click on it, the links, and it'll take you to more pages that have more help. So there's quite a lot of information in there, and if you're ever in trouble on a page, I'd invite you to click on that wiki link. You can also, back to the main menu, you can click on the Consult the Wiki button under the Help Center, and you can do just searching for things, searching for articles by keywords or whatever. And we're also, we're actually recording this right now, and we'll be recording some other training sessions and putting those on the MassVote site. So if you click on the training videos link from the main menu, that'll take you to a page where there'll be some recorded help sessions. So there's a bunch of different ways you can get help. So let's also talk about some of the other basics of navigating around the site. So VAN is, it has two sides to it. that you can see in the tabs in the upper right-hand corner. You have My Voters and My Campaign. And the difference is My Voters is the voter file. That is the state of Massachusetts and all the cities and towns within it. It's the list. It's the list from the Secretary of State's office with some enhancements that we've added on that we can show you. And this is primarily when you're doing voter contact, you'll be using this to create lists and input data. The other side of VAN is the My Campaign tab, which is, you can just click on it, and it's got a little different coloring, so you'll be able to hopefully tell which side of the site you're on. And what this is it's basically a database that you build yourself. So groups, usually they put in volunteers in here, they put in maybe people from out of state that are involved in the organization in some way. They put in newly registered voters that they, if you've gone out canvassing and you need to enter new people in, you can put new people in here. And as you can see, just looking at them, the two look very similar, that you've got the same kinds of tools like creating lists and entering data. But just the difference, again, is that My Campaign is the database you build yourself of your volunteers, your newly registered voters, and sort of new people. And My Voters is the database that comes from the Secretary of State's office. So today we're just mostly going to talk about My Voters for building lists and entering data about lists, but a lot of the same rules and lessons apply to both sides. Creating a list and saving lists and entering data, that stuff all basically works the same across both sides of the database. So let's start with kind of what is VAN data, the database, and what is the stuff that you add on to it, and what is the stuff that's already in there. So I think we'll start just looking at the Create a List page. And so VAN is a database of the state voter file with a lot of other additional enhancements. And as you can see, there's a lot of different categories of things and ways you can search on people. So, the most basic is location or districts, searching by state house district or state senate or by city or by street. You can also search by information about people, so their ages, birthdays, when they registered. You can do things like searching by the kinds of household that they're in, how many Democrats or Republicans are registered in the House, how many men or women or people are in the House. We also have some additional information that we've added in. So we've taken some common last names that apply to Asian or Latino ethnicities and have tagged people in the database as probably of that ethnicity based upon their last name. We've also taken another pass at it using consumer data to come up with likely ethnicities based upon a lot of different factors. So these by no means are totally accurate or 100% accurate, but it could at least provide some clues. So you can do things like, give me everyone who's likely Pacific Islander who lives in Worcester, for example. You can, there's other stuff. The other big thing that you're probably commonly going to be searching on is voting history. So you can do things like you can include people that voted in any particular election, or people who voted in a whole bunch of different elections, or people that voted in some elections but not others. So there's, and as you can see, we've got a lot of election history. The most recent being the 2010 Senate special election. So other things, you can narrow to people that have phone numbers, people by party or by their voter status. So you can search for only registered voters or only unregistered. There's quite a lot. So I'd invite you to just kind of click through this at some point at your leisure and kind of see all your different options for searching. The other two things that I wanted to point out are the survey questions and activist codes. And those are the things in the site that you yourself create and add 2 records as part of your campaign, and can enhance the database in that way. So, I mean, you guys have all been doing this over the years, where you have a question about candidates or issues, and you ask people about that candidate or that issue, record that information, and then come back and search on it later. So, survey questions are those kind of questions like we've talked about, where they can have, do you support this candidate, 1 through 5 level of support, or, do you think this issue is most important? So you can see, here's just an example. It was a 2009 issue, foreclosures. Maybe it was like, have you been affected by foreclosures, yes or no? There's other kinds of issues like, do you plan on voting in the primary? What we'll do in a minute is talk about how you actually create those. But this is sort of your chance to use those kind of questions and add those to people. The other category of information in VAN that you're going to add are activist codes. And activist codes are different than survey questions in that you only apply it if it's a yes answer. So it's like the most common one would be like membership of an organization. Like you want to tag everyone who's the member of some local group, and there's 15 people who are members of that group, and so you're going to tag those 15 people with that membership, but you don't need to tag the other 4.5 million people in the site as not belonging to that group. You only care about the specific people. So just think of that as it's a little tag that you can add to individuals in order to keep track of them. And it can be anything. So whether or not they've attended a particular event, whether or not they've signed a letter to a legislator, or filled out a postcard. So, it's really up to your imagination about the kinds of things that you'd want to record people having done or people having belonged to. You can also see we've added some other ones that are available. Similar to the ethnicity consumer data, we have some consumer data about likely homeowners or likely renters, people residing in households with children or no children, and also likely household income. And so these are available as well to search on. So, you could search on every household within a district where the likely income is, between $25,000 and $50,000. So there's a lot of different things you can search on. And I'm just going to go back to the main menu, and we'll sort of reset for a sec now that we've talked about all the different kinds of information, and now we'll talk about how you actually use that to build a list. So just like in other databases like Access or any others, you can create queries or searches that you can use. So create a list is the same kind of activity, and it can have multiple steps just like other queries. So let's just think like you're trying to build your group of people that you're going to be targeting for the next couple of months to try to get them to vote in the 2010 election. So, most commonly you're going to pick a location, right? So let's just say, and maybe it's multiple cities. This is something else I wanted to point out on the Create a List page. You're going to see in a lot of places these little links, these little blue links that you can mouse over, and they're next to drop downs usually. And if you click on those, what you can do is pick multiple cities in the same search. So I don't know, let's say you're going to be contacting, I don't know. I'm just going to do Cambridge and Somerville because they're next to each other. So let's say your area of activities are in Cambridge and Somerville. So I'm picking Cambridge, and I'm finding Somerville, and not Somerset, but Somerville. And I pick the two, I click Save, and now I'm back here, and it's telling me I've got multiple cities. And you'll also notice here now, because I've selected those 2 cities, that the Senate districts and the House districts and the congressional districts are narrowed to just the districts that are within those cities. So it's pretty common that maybe what we're actually doing, we're active in Cambridge and Somerville, but we're only really active in a couple of House districts, the 25th and 26th or whatever. So now I've sort of set my location, and I also maybe want to keep that with I want all voters. I'm trying to reach, registered and unregistered. And let's just hit search now. So that's going to give me a big list of people. Oop. I'm going to click search. And so now I have a whole bunch of people that live in those districts. And so now, just like other queries, you can also have multiple steps. So this is called the My List page, and after you create and run a search, you're going to come to a page like this, and it's either going to show you the whole list if it's small or just a sample of the list. And what you can also do is click on the description, and it'll tell you what you just searched on, so you can kind of remember what you've done. Now, there's a whole bunch of things you can do here with this list. But I'm just going to show you right now, like if you wanted to make it with multiple steps. So I've got my first step, Cambridge and Somerville, and maybe I want to add another group of people from another part of the state to my list for whatever reason. So maybe I'm doing Cambridge and Somerville, but I also want to add a little piece of Boston to that list. And I just want to add them one particular precinct, let's say. So let's just say I also want to do, Ward 21, Precinct 13. And even, let's say, more specific than that, let's say I only want to do some specific streets within that precinct. So I click on street name, and I can click, I want to do Notting Hill Road and Priscilla Road and Sutherland Road. And just to point out, on this page where the little parentheses thing is, that's kind of an estimate of how many people are living on those streets in the database. So I'm going to click Save. And then, so now I'm adding in a little piece of Boston and just some specific streets. So I click Search. And now that's added like a couple thousand people to my list. And if I click on my description, you'll see I've narrowed, I have my first part, Cambridge and Somerville, and then I've added on some of Boston. But, we're also trying to reach certain kinds of people to target for this election. So we're going to narrow it in our universe to some voting history. So what you do, you just click on the Narrow My List, and basically it just takes the whole group of people that you've already searched for, and we're just going to add another criteria that we want to narrow it to. So we want to, let's include, there's a bunch of different of these categories. So you could say, include anyone who's voted in all the elections you select or any of them. What we're going to say is we want to target people who, and we're going to do all statuses, who voted in the 2008 election and voted in the 2006 election. So we only want to get people that have voted in those previous elections. And I hit search. And it's going to take that previous list and it's going to narrow it down to a smaller group of people. So now I've narrowed it. And the other thing you can do, which is a lot like narrowing, it's just the way you define it, is you can remove people that also meet specific criteria. So maybe I've got my list of people who've, live in these areas and have voted in these two elections, but I also want to remove people that vote just all the time, that have voted in, the last 10 elections. So I'm going to click on Remove People, and I'm going to go back down to Voting History. And I'm going to include in this is now what I'm doing is creating a search of people to remove. So I'm going to remove people who also voted in 2008, 2006, 2004, 2002, and in the, I don't know, 2009 municipal, 2007 municipal, 2008 presidential primary, I don't know, 2006 primary, a whole bunch of elections. And I'm going to click search, and I'm going to take, the 3,000 people from that list that have voted. They vote all the time, and I'm just not going to try to reach out to those people. And now I have, yeah.
To clarify one thing, the difference between all and at least and exactly. Because all means
right.
they vote in every one of those.
Right.
The other things.
Right.
And you want to say what one of.
Sorry, so we got some questions about the voting history, so I'm just going to go back and show that. So I'm going to, another thing you can do from the My List page, if you've just created your list and you click on your description and you look at what you did and you realize you made a mistake, you can click on the More button and click on the Restore Previous List button. I'm just going to make this tiny so I can see it. So I'm going to click on Restore Previous List, and that's just going to go back and click Next. Restore Previous List. And that's just going to go back and take away the last step that I ran. So I just want to clarify again about what I'm removing. So go back to Remove People, and I click on Voting History. And so there's a whole bunch of different categories here, which I kind of glossed over. So the any would be if you select vote, include anyone who voted in any of the previous elections, and I click off 5 or 6 of those elections. The search will include, one person could have only voted in 1 of them or 3 of them or all of them, and it'll include them in that list. If you do all, then it's, and you click 5 elections, it will only include people who voted in all. You also have options like at least, so include anyone who voted in at least, 6 of the last 7 elections. It'll say, those 6 people, 6 elections out of the 7. Doesn't matter which 6, but as long as they voted in 6 out of the last 7, then it'll include that. Or right, but then you have to click the 7. There's also exactly, which is usually like, only people who voted in exactly these particular elections that you've selected, and none others, or no more than, same kind of thing. So include people who voted in no more than 2 of the last 7 elections that you select. So there's a whole bunch of different searches. So I'm going to do the at least one. So, I'm trying to pick out, what I was trying to do was remove people that vote all the time, the super voters, right? And so I'm going to include people who voted in at least 5 of these, a bunch of elections. So I'm going to select a whole bunch of elections, and I'll do the primaries, presidentials, just a whole bunch of elections. And if people have voted in at least 5 of those, we're going to remove them from our list. So I had 18,000, and now I'm going to have fewer. I have a whole bunch, right? So there actually were a whole bunch of people who have voted in a lot of elections. So now I have a list of, say, 3,500 people, and that's going to be my basic universe of people that I want to contact. So now there's a bunch of things you can do with that, and we'll talk about printing stuff out for reports. But the first thing I want to point out is you can save it. So this is just like when you create a query, and you can save it and reuse it. You click Save, and you have some options here, and we should make sure everyone knows the difference between these options. So a saved list, when you save it as a list, is going to give you exactly that same group of people every time. A saved search is going to change over time depending upon what the criteria are. So if you had things like criteria for age or whatever, that's going to change each time you search. It'll rerun the search and make sure that it's going to be the same criteria.
Can you repeat that once more?
Sure. Yeah. So just to repeat that, so the saved list is it'll just store those exact names that you pulled up, the 3,000 or so that I had just pulled up. And no matter what happens or new information that comes in about those people that might have affected the search, that list will remain the same. A saved search will change based upon the criteria that happens. So a common thing would be, and you're going to want to do this going forward when you create searches, is, this happens all the time, right? You go door to door and you find the people that, they don't want to talk to you. They don't want you to ever come back. They're very angry. Right. So what you're going to do in your Canvas result is mark them as refused or hostile, or there's some other options. The most common is refused. And so, what you'd want to do and include on your searches is exclude, and, the last step of your search would be, and remove everyone from this list who has been marked refused in the past, right? So it's give me all these people based upon all these, their location and voting history or whatever else, and just remove everyone I've already talked to who's been marked refused. So it's a common saved search, and I would highly recommend always removing people who are, been marked deceased, been marked bad address, been marked refused from your searches. Go ahead, Mimi.
One quick question.
Yeah, one more question coming in.
I just want to make sure I understand it. So the saved list will create the actual criteria that you put into a list, but as you update information, that's not going to change on your list.
Right. Again, a saved list is only the people. It's by the people that you pulled up.
So when we're doing like get out the vote work in the community, whether it's phone banking or door knocking or however we're doing it, do you think it's better for us to have the list of saved search then? I just feel like our list is going to be
changing. Yeah.
Yeah. In most cases is better.
Yeah, we had a question about whether or not saved search or saved list is better, and I would recommend that saved search is generally going to be better. Saved list is usually something like you've mailed like 500 people, and you want to keep that list. I mailed these 500 people. You would save that as a list. So it's an actual group of people that you want to identify. That's the most common thing I would think of. You have a saved list of people who...
Or attendees at an event.
That's right.
If you want to know who actually showed up at an event, that's the saved list.
That's right.
But if you're going to go out knocking doors of everybody who hasn't...
So...
search, because you need to keep that information keeping updated.
So, do you give it the file your own name?
Yeah, I'm just going to do that in a sec. I'm just typing in something.
Yeah.
So once you're ready to save your search or your list, we also have some options where you can have folders, right? We have a whole bunch of existing folders, or you can create new folders. So, we'll just call this Cambridge, Somerville, Boston, Canvas universe, Canvas group. And then we'll call this one, we'll just call this the master list. And I click save, and now I've got my saved search. Now there's other things you can do. You can assign the same search to multiple folders. You can come back and edit that search later. You can save it as something else and add additional steps to it. So I'm going to show you how to do that now, because what we're going to do is narrow down that list to smaller groups, and we're going to use that for phone banking and canvassing. So before we do that, I just wanted to say, so we're kind of covering creating lists, and now I also want to cover how we're going to use those lists and create, and creating the data that you're going to add on to people as part of your canvassing and your phone banking. So like I said before, there's the two basic are the activist codes and survey questions, and then you're going to use those in scripts. So I'm just going to cover that real quick while we're here. So from the main menu, you see that in this codes, questions, and scripts section, and you'll see you've got your activist codes, your survey questions, and your scripts. And so we'll just go through how to create each one. So creating activist codes, you just click on it, and you'll see some existing ones. And I'm just using New England United for Justice Committee right now just to show you guys an example, because you guys were here first. But so if you want to add a new one, you just click on Add New Activist Code. And we have some types. So, let's just say event is a common one. So let's say, there was an event, coffee hour, that was July 20th. And then you have to basically give it a long name, coffee 710, coffee. Coffee hour event on 7/20/2010. And then you give it the question that would, you can add a question. You don't have to for activist codes. Like in this case, it's probably, there isn't a question. You're just keeping track of people who attended the event, so you wouldn't need to add a question to it. And then you also have some choices around public or private. Typically, you're going to want to keep it public. That just means that the other people within your committee, within your group, can see it and can be assigned or removed. You also want to keep that because you can add it or remove it from people over time. District roles, we don't need to worry about that right now. And as well as the organizations, we'll cover that in the advanced training. And then you can also, the database, you can either apply only to the voter file or only to My Campaign or both. So typically it's going to belong to both because you're going to use it for both your volunteers and your voters, but sometimes it might only apply to one or the other. Then I click Save, and now I have it. And now it's all done. And I click Save again, and I'm back to my list of activist codes. I've got my coffee hour there. And that's it. So you just create them that way. If I go back to the main menu, survey questions, quite similar. I create a new survey question. Now, survey questions are tied to cycles because, typically it's going to be, you're going to ask about specific issues for that year, but you can reuse them from year to year as well. So we'll say cycle 2010, and we'll say, there's a whole bunch of different types that you'll decide, like events. Are you coming to this event? Will you be attending with somebody else, whatever? Or you could just, let's just do issues. So, typical one would be like issue preference, issue, what issue most concerns you this year, something like that. You've got your statuses, active, archived, or inactive. And you're going to see that pop up all over Van. Active means it's in use and it comes up. Archived means it's been set aside for in the past, so you might want to archive, your 2002 issue questions. And they're still there, but then you can pull them up specifically. They don't automatically come up. And inactive is basically the equivalent of deleting. Nothing ever really gets deleted in Van. It's just made inactive, which means that it goes away and it can't be seen unless you reactivate it. And then you can also allow things to be viewable by only the committees you select or all committees. So typically you want to do just viewable by committees with access. But sometimes you might want to do all committees, which would make it so everybody across the site can view it. So that's your choice on so that's your choice among your group if you want to share it. And then also the database, does it apply to one or both? So we'll do both. And Domenico just asked a question, can an issue question have multiple options? And the answer is no, all survey questions can have one answer. So the way groups typically handle that is, they would have a question like, what issue most concerns you? What is your biggest issue? What is your second biggest issue? What is your third? Something like that. And then you can have the same same issues like housing, whatever on your list, but people would give answers to each of those questions. So just to reiterate, so the question was, can a survey question have multiple answers? And a person can only give one answer. But there are multiple options to answer, right? Right. Yeah, and I'll go through how to answer that. So the question was like, what issue most concerns you this year, and then you get you answer to put in all the potential responses. So housing, and it has long response, short response, medium. Let's say housing, transportation. I don't know. Sales tax, I don't know. There's a whole, whatever the various issues are. And so you can just add all these in. I don't know. Healthcare, right? I'm going blank on what the issues are these days. And so, so you can have 3 issues, you can have 10 issues, 100 issues, but then when you ask the question, then a person gives one answer. So, and then you can also come back later, like I just did. I accidentally created healthcare twice. Come back and edit the responses, or delete them, or add new ones. So I'm going to click Save. And you'll see here it's now in my list. So I can come back to it, click on Issue Preference, and I can come back and edit it and add new responses or use those new responses. So I'm going to go back to the main menu now. Something else I should point out, getting around the site. It's usually best not to use the back button or the forward button like you would in a browser, but to use these little things called breadcrumbs to be able to navigate around. So it tells you where you are, and you can also click on the links to get around the page, the main menu, or to whatever section it is. You can also always click on the banner, and that'll take you back to the main page. So now I've created a survey question in Activist Code. Now I'm going to use that in a script. So let's go ahead and create a script now. You see that in the same section. Just click on Scripts. You'll see some existing ones. I'm going to click on Add a New One, and we'll just call this, van demonstration. Lynn just asked a question about how you keep up with relocations and deaths, and I'm going to show that in a sec. That's actually a Canvas result, which is a little different than the survey questions and Activist Codes. So we'll do that now that we're on the scripts. So I'm just going to call this the van demonstration script, give it a name, give it a description. Now scripts can apply only to